Most of the planet Earth is water. We haven't even finished exploring every inch of our home planet's land yet, so imagine how much more there is to discover beneath the waves. The deepest reaches of the oceans are still a great mystery to us, but that doesn't mean we haven't made a few remarkable underwater discoveries. In fact, amazing underwater discoveries are made all the time, as you're about to see. The Italian city of Venice is famous worldwide for its canals. It's a city on water. But beneath the water lurks a few surprises. As we found out in July 2021, one of those surprises is an ancient Roman road. The road is beneath the Vence Lagoon and seems to suggest the presence of Roman settlements in the area long before the official founding of Venice in the 5th century. While there's water everywhere you look in Venice now, things were very different during the Roman era. The Venice Lagoon was dry land and might have been occupied by a small Roman town or fort. Roman-era artifacts have been found in the vicinity of the lagoon before, but never before have archaeologists found anything as significant as this road. A sonar scan of the road might also have revealed the presence of a dock or a harbor, along with 4 other structures that are yet to be identified. Hopefully, marine archaeologists will soon dive down to the site to take a closer look and report back with their findings. The world's oceans are littered with shipwrecks. Although efforts are made to find the wrecks of particularly valuable or famous wrecks, the reality is that most ships that sink will never be found. Sometimes, though, they turn up decades after they went down. That was the case for the British Royal Navy submarine HMS Urge, which was found in November 2019, a full 77 years after it sank in the Mediterranean during the Second World War. The vessel was headed from Malta to Alexandria in Egypt in 1942 when it was attacked by German forces. The Germans were desperate to capture Malta and, along with their allies, laid siege to the British-controlled island for 2 entire years. The wreck of the HMS Urge, which was found by archaeologists from the University of Malta, is over 400 feet below the water off Malta's coast, but appears to be in one piece. Even the 12-pound deck gun is still attached. There's no sign of the damage that must have caused the vessel's sinking, so it may be on the underside of the wreck. We'll probably never find out, as the site of the wreck is now listed as a war grave and cannot be disturbed. Our next discovery has been waiting a very long time for human beings to notice it. It's a fish that's thought to have existed on Earth since the Jurassic era, and it's quite a fierce one. The creature has 8 sets of sharp teeth and a body covered in hooks. Scientists have given the newly discovered species the name Ophagura expodi and believe it to be a distant relative of the starfish. They also believe the species to be around 180 million years old. It was first observed over 1,600 feet below the surface of the South Pacific, living at the top of an underwater mountain called Banc Durin. It's thought that they must be native to the area. Curiously, the scientists responsible for the discovery believe that the species hasn't evolved for millions of years. While other forms of brittle stars have changed and adapted over time, this one seems to have stayed the same. The reasons for that are unknown. Marine experts would like to spend more time studying the species, but given their rarity and the depths they live at, it's extremely difficult to collect specimens for research. The ancient Egyptian city known as Thonis Heraklion has been giving up its secrets to archaeologists one at a time for several years now. The city was of enormous importance to the Egyptians and then later to the Greeks who settled here, but it was utterly destroyed by earthquakes and landslides around 2,200 years ago. The damage was so severe and extensive that Thonis Heraklion essentially fell into the sea. In July 2021, archaeologists working at the site announced a new raft of discoveries, including a large military vessel and a sprawling burial complex. The military ship, which is an impressive 82 feet long, is wedged in a canal that once flowed along the south face of the Temple of Amun. It was laden down with heavy stones that had probably come from the temple and had no chance of escape when the earthquake struck. The burial tumulus, which appears to be Greek, is at the northeast entrance of the same canal. The treasures and grave goods buried within it have been dated to 2,400 years ago and confirm that whoever was buried here must have been enormously rich. The cost of losing Thonis Heracleon and everything in it must have been almost incalculable. Here's one for fans of the Lord of the Rings movie series to enjoy. It's an undersea volcano near Christmas Island in the Indian Ocean, and it looks a lot like the Eye of Sauron. The depression in the ocean floor, known as a caldera, is around 10,000 feet below sea level. Its highest point is the part that looks like the pupil of the eye, which is a 900-foot-tall cone. It's likely that this was once actually a conventional-looking volcano, but the volcano collapsed thousands of years ago and allowed molten magma to shift upward through the collapsed structure, leaving empty chambers behind. The chambers eventually also collapse, leaving a crater-like shape like this. As the volcano is still active, it occasionally spews forth fresh magma, creating new peaks every time it does. This is the same process that created Krakatoa in Indonesia, which exploded in 1883 and took almost an entire mountain with it. It's likely that there are dozens of structures like this one under the sea, but they're so far beneath the surface that it's hard for us to detect them even when they erupt. This one was found by chance rather than judgment. We've looked at an ancient Egyptian sunken city already, so now let's check out an Indian one. The sunken town was found off the coast of Mamapuram, India, in early 2016. Archaeologists believe it to be between 1,000 and 1,500 years old. Very little of the town remains, but it's still possible to see the ruins of a temple, along with a staircase, and what might have once been a city wall. The discovery confirmed rumors of a sunken town in the area that first appeared in 2004 in the aftermath of a tsunami in the region. As the waters receded, locals claimed to have seen large granite boulders sticking out above the waves. Those boulders turned out to be part of the temple. It's hard to identify the builders of the ruins because the thick layers of aquatic life clinging to their walls make it difficult to identify the architectural style. After several years of careful study, experts now believe they were created during the Sangam period of 2,300 years ago. The reason for the town's sinking is still unknown. It could have been due to an earthquake, or it may just have been due to a global rise in sea levels. When the HMS Victory sank in the English Channel in 1774, it was a colossal disaster for the British Navy. Over 1,000 sailors were lost that day, and the fleet lost its flagship. The vessel's name was eventually reused for another flagship of the British Navy, which would sail under the command of Lord Nelson. The wreck of the first HMS Victory, though, was eventually rediscovered by divers in September 2008. It's around 50 miles to the southeast of Plymouth. These remarkable images of the wreck were captured by Navy officer and marine photographer Dominic Robinson, who was amazed to find the vessel's guns still attached and still in good condition, right down to the still visible royal crests on the weapons. He thinks it's highly likely that the cannons are still loaded. Aside from the cannons, Robinson discovered personal items like galley bricks and kettles. There was a lengthy debate about whether any of the ship's artifacts should be brought back to the surface, but that debate was finally resolved in 2019 when the British High Court decided that the wreck should be left as it is. In November 1120, a vessel known simply as the White Ship collided with Culebuff Rock near Barfleur, France, and sank. Aboard the ship, William Atheling, the son and only heir of King Henry I of England. In June 2021, over 900 years after the sinking, divers announced that they believe they've discovered the wreck. The sinking of the White Ship was a hugely significant event in 12th century England, leading to a crisis over who would succeed Henry as king. That crisis eventually turned into a civil war. While the archaeologists are positive that they've found the right wreck, it's hard to identify it from these images. What little we can see of the deck is covered in seaweed. It barely looks like a ship at all. Perhaps this discovery can put an end to the speculation about what caused the vessel to sink. It said that conditions at sea were calm on the day it went down and that the ship wasn't attacked. Instead, the rumor has always been that everyone aboard the White Ship drank copious amounts of wine both before and during their departure from Normandy, and that their drunkenness was responsible for the navigational error that saw the ship hit the rocks. Over 300 years ago, a fleet of Spanish ships known as the Tierra Firme was sailing around the coast of Florida, USA. The fleet was laden heavy with golden treasures and on its way home to Spain. Unfortunately for the Spanish government, the weather had other ideas. The fleet ran into a hurricane at sea, resulting in the loss of 11 vessels, including the flagship Capitana. Countless treasure hunters went looking for the wreck of the Capitana and its cargo of treasures over the years that followed, but nobody had any success until Eric Schmidt and his family found the golden cargo in 2015. Amazingly, the Bounty was just 1,000 feet off the coast of Fort Pierce and just 15 feet below the surface. While the Schmidt family's discovery doesn't constitute the entire cargo of the Capitana, they found over 100 silver coins, more than 50 gold coins, a 40-foot-long solid gold chain, and jewelry made with precious stones. The haul is estimated to be worth over $1 million in total. The big question is whether this discovery means the wreck is nearby. The Schmidt family has continued to look for it in the 6 years since this find, but they found nothing so far. A floating gin palace sounds like a fun place to be. We're sure this floating gin palace was a popular vessel to be aboard during the 18th century, until it sank. The wreck of the vessel was discovered by Russian marine archaeologists in August 2020. It's thought that the ship was on its way to St. Petersburg from Finland when it sank and was piled high with several hundred bottles of gin for the royal family. It didn't get very far. In fact, the vessel is still in the Gulf of Finland. Aside from the booze, the ship also contained fragrance bottles and pine needles. Many of the gin bottles retrieved from the wreck have a London seal, so it's likely the alcohol was first imported to Finland from England before being sent on its way to Russia. Confusingly, the vessel itself appears to be Dutch in design. Historians have been able to find no record of its sinking or its passage, which makes the incident something of a mystery. It hasn't yet been possible to confirm what sank the ship or when it sank, but archaeologists haven't given up hope of finding out. If you're unwell, your doctor might prescribe you a course of medicinal pills to treat your illness. Most of us probably think of pills as a relatively modern form of medicine, but that's not the case. Here are some ancient Roman medicinal pills from inside a 2,000-year-old shipwreck. The vessel known as the Relito del Pozzino sank close to the Tuscan coast and was rediscovered in 2017. It's in such good condition that divers have been able to retrieve some of its cargo, including these tiny pills and the sealed tin that's protected them for so many centuries. The pills were found inside a medicine chest, which also contained a surgeon's hook and more than 100 drug vials. The pills have been analyzed in a lab to determine their content. They were found to be made of iron oxide, beeswax, starch, pine resin, and zinc. Based on that, scientists believe they were intended as a form of eye medicine. Rather than being swallowed, the pills would be rubbed beneath the eyes and absorbed by the skin. They probably weren't an especially effective treatment for most eye conditions, but they were better than nothing. 111 years ago, locomotive CPR 694 derailed after hitting a boulder on the track close to Schreiber, Ontario, Canada. The derailment sent the train careening out of control and eventually deposited it at the bottom of Lake Superior. In 2016, after many years of searching, the sunken freight train was finally found by underwater recovery expert Tom Crossman. The icy waters of Lake Superior are a nightmare for divers, so Tom used a remotely operated vehicle to get close to the wrecked train and take these incredible pictures. 2 of the train's boxcars had been found in 2014, but the locomotive itself remained elusive until Crossman and his equipment found it hidden between boulders a few feet away from the boxcars. Unfortunately, it's too badly damaged to be raised. Even the pieces that have remained intact would likely crumble if any attempt was made to move them. Tom hasn't ruled out the idea of trying to retrieve the whistle and bell from the train, but even that might be easier said than done. It's an interesting piece of history, but one that might be better off left where it is. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.